So, hi, my name is Olli Pirttilä and I work for Gofore, which is the company we are at the moment. So, I was told I need to give a short presentation what is Gofore, so here goes. Gofore is a IT consulting company. We build great things for private and public organizations. Was that correct? Yes. So I'm quite new in this company, but yeah. Yeah, well, okay. So at Gofore I work as a UX designer, and as you will see from my slides, I'm not from the graphical design end of the spectrum. Maybe I'm more sort of a user research, UI concepting work kind of a person, and maybe somewhat geared towards the front end development side of stuff. So today I'm going to tell you about our experiences designing for a very low performance hardware, and the case I'm going to base this on is our UI sort of electrical bike user interface we did for Qt company. How many of you know what is Qt platform? Great. So yeah, for those who don't know, Qt company is a Finnish company that does a cross-platform software development kit that enables you to do, for example, user interfaces for embedded devices. So, for example, car user interfaces, or in our case, an electrical bike user interface. So, Qt company contacted us and they wanted to demonstrate for their CES 2018 display that an independent design and implementation team could use their technology to do a good-looking and well-performing user interface on a very low-performance hardware. So the restrictions they gave us that we need to use this specific hardware, which is very low-end hardware, and the user interface needs to run 60 FPS on that device at all times. If it doesn't, it's not worth doing. So we took this as a sort of creative challenge and put together a team of 2 UX designers, which I'm one of, and then my colleague from Tampere. And then we have had 1 visual designer or sort of a graphical designer, and then 1 developer doing the actual implementation. And the hardware that we were given was this one. This probably doesn't tell much of anything to anyone if you don't happen to know that hardware, but basically this is the most low performance hardware money can buy. Basically, it doesn't have a dedicated GPU, it has very low amount of memory, and then the touchscreen we were supposed to use was a 5.7-inch touchscreen, which was a resistive touchscreen instead of a capacitive touchscreen, which like modern smartphones and all of these, they are capacitive. So resistive touchscreens are those that don't register your touch very easily. So this was our starting point, and at this point when we heard the hardware specifications, we were like, okay, so this is going to be interesting, but we took it as a creative challenge and soldiered on. So at this point someone might say, 60 FPS without a GPU, like, is that even possible? It turns out yes, it is possible, and we managed to do that. So first we in a span of like 2 weeks we did 2 different concepts, and then after Qt company reviewed our concepts, we sort of took the best parts of both concepts and put them into 1 concept, and this is one sort of screen out of that concept. So basically our design thinking was that, or sort of the principles behind the design was that touch areas need to be very large because of the low sensitivity of that resistive touchscreen. And sort of all of the interactions need to be very clear and very easy to use because of the low performance touchscreen. And the sort of main thing in this user interface is the main dial, which sort of puts together all of the critical information that the e-bike rider needs while riding. This is the initial sort of rough wireframe, and then after we worked. I forgot to say that the project was in really short time span. So the whole project from start to finish was, I think it was 8 to 10 weeks in total. And we worked in after the initial concept, we worked in 1 week sprints, which is really a fast pace. So after some revisions, the final design looks pretty much like this. And I have a local version of this running on my computer right now. And if this works, I can show it to you. It's here, yeah. I'm sorry I can't make that larger because this is designed only for that specific screen on that specific resolution. So if I stretch it out, it will break. But basically, we have these 4 sort of quadrants that this is the interface is divided up to. So in the bottom row we have toggle type switches. You can switch the mode of the bike on or off, and then you can also switch the headlamp on and off. And then on the upper row we have sort of widget type data. So information about your current trip, burned calories, miles traveled, and then you have also a navigation widget. And both of these works in a way that if you press it, you go to a new view. And here is some stats about your trip, and you can also enter your current trip, and then you can look at history of trips and data about those trips. And the main dial, which is the sort of most prominent feature in this UI, minimizes to the left side here. So at all times you can see your speed and all that stuff. So the main dial, there's you can see your speed in both numbers and then this sort of arc here, also average speed, and then things about your e-bike's battery. So how many assisted miles do you have left and what's the charge on your battery, and also the level of assistance that the electric motor is giving you. And then we have the navigation. So this is centered in Las Vegas because CES was in Las Vegas. So for demo purposes, this is in Las Vegas. Then we can, for example, navigate to the Mirage, for example. Pretty simple. Then we have also this settings curtain that has critical information about your bike. So if there's some sort of IoT stuff on your bike, you can look up like things like tire pressure or battery health or whatever. And also we built in some tools that would help us in the development process. So for example, we built in an FPS counter, which came in pretty handy because we needed to make sure that at all times this will run 60 FPS on the target hardware. Because it's running on desktop, it's always now 60, but we could test out that we did a new feature or a new thing to the UI, and we straight away we needed to test on the target hardware that it would actually run 60 FPS. And that was not given actually at all times. So this is pretty much the end product. And then because Qt Company has this kind of a principle that it needs to run 60 FPS. Yeah, because it's a showcase that even with this very low performance hardware, it needs to run 60 FPS. So we at some points of the design we were like, this looks good. It looks smooth. A normal person wouldn't notice that this doesn't run 60 FPS, but the restriction was 60 FPS, so you better make it 60 FPS. So yeah, if I go back to my slides here, yeah. So a couple of sort of insights we had from the process. These are sort of maybe common sense for most of us, but the most important thing I think was that the importance of prototyping, testing out constantly and on a very early phase. So sort of the fail fast sort of principle applies here also. So we worked in 1 week sprints and then iteratively designed the user interface and implemented things. And we went from sort of ideas to wireframes to designing visual assets to deploying it on the target hardware in a very short period of time. And also most of the time we even skipped the sort of wireframe phase of it and then did like rough visual assets and straight away test it on the target hardware, because you can run it on a desktop, but for example the colors on that MacBook screen are hugely different than on a sort of, I don't know, was it 10 euros what the actual target hardware display costs. So for example contrast, colors, all of these things are much different, and the sort of look and feel of using the user interface it's hugely different compared to running it on the desktop. So that was sort of necessary. You need to do development tests really early on. Just if you have an idea, could this thing move here and do this and that, and even before you start to design the actual visual assets that will be used, make sure that it runs 60 FPS. For example, in our case, it needed to run 60 FPS. So just do some mock-up visuals and try it out on the target hardware, so you won't sort of do work in vain, so to speak. So test it out really early. And then another thing was that we used the Qt ecosystem, of course. So this applies to Qt. I don't know if this applies to other software platforms. I'm not a software developer, but at least in the case of Qt, this applies. So if you want to make a visually good looking user interface with very low performance hardware, it's good to prefer using images rather than drawing sort of UI elements with the hardware. So for example, Qt ecosystem has tools that you can draw like circle or what's that? Square or circle like elements with the hardware, so you don't need to use the sort of visual assets, so images as the UI components. But in our case, the low performance hardware can show images no problem. The images can be moved around, done, all sorts of things can be done to those images. But if you try to draw, for example, those same buttons or something with the hardware, 60 FPS, no go. So using images in a creative way to make a visually good looking UI possible with low-end hardware. And then, well, this is maybe self-evident that forget about fancy transitions and visual tricks. And actually this is sort of the thing that was the sort of creative challenge with it. So for example, Qt ecosystem has tools that you can use to, for example, have drop shadows on a button or something like this. But on that entry-level hardware, it doesn't run 60 FPS if you even use something like drop shadows or dynamically changing opacity or something like this. So transitions and all of these things need to be done in some other way. So for example, for drop shadows, we had a picture that looks like a shadow, and it works fine. So if you take only one thing from our experiences for yourself, I think the first one is the most important. I think this fail fast sort of principle applies to many different what's the word? Avenues of design. It applies to software development, it applies to UI design, it applies to many different things, but always prototype very early and prototype constantly in order to fail fast. That makes it easy to avoid doing things in vain. So that's pretty much my presentation. If you have any questions, I can answer them. My train is leaving at 7 or something, but yeah, thank you.
So did you do this for so some company ordered this work from you, or was this just a showcase from the Qt company?
So yeah, Qt company. So this is not for an actual product. This is only a demo for Qt company to show at their CES booth that look, we can do a visually good looking and well performing UI on this crappy hardware. That's basically it. Yeah.
So you had a team of 4. How did you come up with the people on it? You had 3 UX guys, one on the more on the visual side, and then the coder. Is that like a normal thing for you? Like, do you often do these kind of concepts, or did you have to kind of experiment with the team, or how did that, you know?
Yeah, we had 2 UX designers, 1 graphical designer, and then 1 developer. I don't actually know if that's kind of this. I think this is kind of not the normal type of project we do, but sort of. And actually, the sort of roles and responsibilities were really like flexible. So we worked in a really lean manner. So because of the short time we had, and then sort of, I think the project manager who was in charge of this project put together a team of people that would have like different kind of skills and all of that. And I think, I don't know, maybe Jaakko can answer. Is this normal that we have basically three designers on one project, but all of these people weren't working all the time, so we sort of worked very flexibly. Whatever the project needed, then the right person was in on it. This was for us. This was sort of a skunkworks project also. So, but it was highly interesting. Actually, this was my first project in this company. I was like, if this is like, if all the projects are like this, I'm very happy. So yeah.
You should sell that design to some e-bike.
Yeah, we were thinking that maybe we do a spin-off startup or something. Oh, no, not really. But yeah, I think even though from the beginning we knew that this wasn't going to be a real product, we designed it as a real product. So we did some user interviews, and we always kept in mind that how would this work if this was an actual e-bike? So, for example, screen, contrast, and all of these things. So the usability needed to be as it would be on a real product. So it could work. I think Qt company is going to publish the code of this build, so independent developers can use the code and make it even better. So if you want to put that company up, you can do it with our design. So yeah. Anything else?
Quick one.
Yeah.
Did you usability test it, let's say, in a sunny condition?
Actually, no. We
think it may be challenging to see some details when it's dark background and maybe some reflections.
Yeah.
Just one note.
Yeah. Actually, on that screen, it looks really dark. It is a bit. But actually, that's a good point that I forgot.
Just the invert button.
Yes, something like that.
Actually, as you saw, we had on our concept and wireframes, we always did this, and we thought about doing a day mode and a night mode, so you can switch it. But on the final implementation, there's not that. There isn't that function, but we can implement it. I think even the code for it, we have the code for it, but we didn't implement it on sort of demo device. But that's actually one thing that I forgot to mention, that it was kind of surprising even that, for example, when you design on this screen and you think about contrast, you think about colors, you think about these things, and then when you put it on the target hardware, which is something like a 5 or 10 euro device. For example, the viewing angle was really bad. So even slight difference in viewing angle and the contrast would go to hell, basically. So you needed to look at it in a very like fixed angle for it to work as we intended. And this is precisely the reason that you need to always put it on the actual target hardware very early, because if we would have designed the thing and then implement it and only then put it at the end of the project, put it on the target hardware, there would have been some really nasty surprises with it. So we had to actually we played around a lot with the colors. So for example, the whites we have on this design, there used to be different sort of shades of white or gray, and which look really beautiful on that MacBook screen. And when we put it on the actual target hardware, you couldn't even see, basically, for example, these. You couldn't even see these or these, and then we had to play around it and actually implement it on the target hardware to get the color right. So that is exactly the reason you need to prototype and test with the target hardware. Anything else?
How did you test the functionality? Like, did you start the code or use some else software?
What?
Like, when you want to test some functionality of the software on or this app, how do you test before you start to invest time for the code, or did you straight away go to the hardware?
Basically, we just straight away. If we had an idea, we discussed it with our software developer, who made, for example, really rough tests. So, for example, if I have it here. So, for example, here when we did this thing, it's here. Yeah. So, for example, the movement of all of the elements when you click on it, these kind of things, and actually the movement of this, we needed to make sure that we can implement it in a way that doesn't affect the FPS. So basically, our software development just threw together some sort of mock UI with some like rough images that he made himself, and then tried out. So basically, straight to coding. But the Qt ecosystem, as I understand it, as I said, I'm not a software developer, but as I understand it, is quite quick to make. Sort of, it has tools to make transitions and basic UI elements built in, so you can really quickly have some mock screens that you can actually play with. Anything else? I need to leave at 7, so there's like 10 minutes still, and I need to take my camera apart. But if you have any questions, I can, of course, answer. Yeah. So I have plenty of time. Yep. If nothing else, then thank you.